In this video, I'm going to show you how you can create an element inside of JavaScript and add them to your HTML by clicking on the Add More button right here. I'm going to show you how you can create elements and create more children and append them to a single box right in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So if you're interested in that, let's just get started with the tutorial. So to get started, all I've just done right here is to create this simple HTML boilerplate and actually link my CSS file to it. As you can see right here, we do have a CSS file where we've actually removed every margin, every padding, and also every border box. As you can see, we have a blank white board right here in Edge. So the next thing we need to do right here is to set a section where we want to import or append our elements. So what we simply want to do is that I'm going to create a div here and I'm going to call this parent. I'm going to call this parent, and right here we have our parent side. So the next thing is that I'm going to style this parent and actually position it at the center of the screen. So I'm going to highlight that, copy this class name right here, and I'm going to put it in the CSS file. I'm going to call it the .parent, and also what I simply want to do right here is that I want to set the width. Okay, for this I'm going to set a max width, and I'm going to give it something close to like 600 pixels. Also I want to add the border to it. I want to add a border of 1 pixel, should be solid and then red, so that we can actually see it right here on the screen. As you can see, it's quite tiny right here, so we want to give this some. So one of the things I like doing is to set an aspect ratio for it instead of setting a height. So I'm going to set an aspect ratio of 16:9, and then it should be wide enough like this for us. The next thing we simply want to do is to set a margin inline. So say margin inline like that. And what we simply want to do is to set it to auto, so it will stay in the middle of the screen this way. And now what we need to add right here is a button right underneath this. So I'm going to set a button, and I'm going to call this dots. I'm going to give this a class of add, and inside of the button I want to say add more circles. So add more circles. That's what I want to add right here, and you can see this is the button right here. So we're going to simply style that button right a little bit so it looks good on the eye. All we simply want to do is to give it a padding. So we're going to set a padding to the button. We're going to give it a padding of 1 rem and 1.3 rem, and once we set the padding that way, we can hit save, and you see the button looks good like this. Also we simply need to give that a margin from all sides, so we say margin, and we simply want to set it 0 auto so it stays in the center. But before that, all we simply want to do is to set a display of block on our button. Okay, so we set a display and we're going to call it block, and that should position our button right here in the center. But also for this, we simply want to delete the 0 here and put in something like 2 rem so that it gets a lot of space from this actual box right here. So as you can see, we have this button right here. Last thing we need to add is a cursor pointer. So we're going to add a cursor called pointer to this, and we have this right now, so we can click on this and it should add more circles here. But before we do that, all we simply want to do is to create a simple circle inside there that we need to add. So we'll do this. We're going to create a .child element right here. So when we create a .child element, it doesn't need to have anything inside. You can style that with CSS. So the next thing we simply want to do right here is that we're going to add that .child. What I simply want to do right here is to add a height. So we're going to give it a height of like, let's say 50 pixels. We're going to add a width also to this, and say 50 pixels also to the width. And finally we're going to add a background also. So add a background, and we're going to give this something like Rebecca purple like this. So when we hit save, we have all this. Now what we simply want to do is to make this a circle. So we're going to say border radius. So border radius 50%. And also in our parent element, what we simply want to do is to add a little bit of padding. So we say padding. We're going to add padding to this and give it something like 10 pixels, which is quite enough for it. So now we have one circle here as our boilerplate. We can start by adding more JavaScript and generating more circles anytime we do click on this box right here. So right here, as you can see guys, in our HTML, I'm simply going to go down and link my JavaScript. So I'm going to say script right here, and I'm going to give it a source, and I'm going to say ./script.js. When we save this, we can hold Control and click on it, and since the file is not yet created, VS Code is going to ask us to create it. We can just hit create file right there, and now we have our JS file. We hold Control, and that's it right there. Our JS file is already created for us, and we can check it by clicking right here on this, and we see we have our CSS file, JS file, and the index file. So right here, back on this place, we're going to go to our script file right now, and we need to import 2 things. First of all, we need to import the button. Also, we need to import this box right here. And I can remember that The box, we set it as a parent element, so it has a class of parent, and also the button has a class of add. So what we simply want to do here in our JS is that we want to call these two classes. So we're going to say const right here to set a variable. We're going to call this parent, or we're going to call this parent box right here, and we're going to set that equals to a document. So we're going to document, we're going to find the query selector, and we're going to use it to select the parent element. So we're going to add in this in parentheses and also select the dot parent in HTML. So the next thing we simply want to do right here after this is to select the button. So I'm going to call this add btn like that, and we are going to select that add button. So it's just add, if I'm not mistaken, right here, just add. So what we simply want to do is that anytime we click on the button, we want it to generate a new circle and append it inside of this box. So what we're simply going to do is that we are going to add an event listener to our button anytime we click on it. So we're going to say that add btn like this, dot add event listener like that, and we're going to put this in quotes. We're going to call that we want to listen for anytime we have a click, and what we want to do is that we want to call this function in ESLint. So we have this function right here that we want to call anytime we click on the button. So the first thing we want to do is that we want to create the element. Okay, so we're going to say const and set this equal to, you can say const new element like this equals to document dot create element right here. What we want to create is an element, and inside of this we can find the element we want to create. So we want to create a div right there. So we want to create a div. Now the next thing we want to do after we actually create this element is that we want to give it a class. Okay, we want to give it a class. So we're going to say the new element right here, say new element dot class name. The class name should be equal to, now what we simply want to give it is this same circle class that we added to this. So this is a child, so we want to give it a child. So what we're simply going to set this to is a child. And when we set this to a child, what we simply want to do after this is to append this stuff inside of this box right here. So what we want to do right here is that we're going to say parent box dot append child. So we're going to say append child, and the child we want to append into this place is the new element child right here. So we want to append the new element child right here. So when we save this, we can hit add more circles right here, and as you can see guys, we have these circles automatically appearing in this way. So the more we keep adding, the more it keeps growing, it keeps growing, it keeps growing this way. So guys, that's all you need to add more children inside of this. And if you want to actually make them go down this way, all you just need to do is to come over to this parent element, and what you simply want to do is to set a display and call it flex. And when you save that, you can see that it goes this way. So you keep adding more children, they keep increasing, and also there's a way you can actually do this so that once it goes to this part, it just keeps breaking down and down and down like that. Well guys, that's all for today. That's how you can simply create an element in JavaScript and actually append it to a HTML object. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.